Apocalypse is the only wooden coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the park with the most roller coasters in the world. This GCI coaster is a solid representative of the genre, but is it the best wooden coaster in California, and how does it stack up to the state's other woodies? Furthermore, how does this ride compare to the other coasters in the park? We'll delve into all of that and more in this review, but first let's go back to when this ride originally opened. It opened to the public on May 23, 2009, themed to the new film Terminator Salvation, and in fact it was called Terminator Salvation: The Ride. To enforce the movie theme, Six Flags spent about $1 million theming up the attraction. Most of this was in the queue line. The queue would even be complete with a pre-show featuring actors from the film. As for the coaster itself, it featured fog, fire, onboard audio, and tunnels to help enforce the theme. Unfortunately, most of these theming elements have been removed, and only the tunnels remain. To my knowledge, this was the first time onboard audio had been used on a wooden coaster. Unfortunately, it stopped working as early as 2010. So yeah, safe to say that effect didn't last particularly long. In 2011, Six Flags decided to take off the Terminator theme and all the licensing fees that came with it. And since 2011, the coaster has operated as Apocalypse: The Ride. Apocalypse still maintains some of the old theming, just without the Terminator licensing, and it has a much more generic theme. Guests now enter an industrial military research compound after a post-apocalypse. The latter half of the queue is indoors, and it leads to the enclosed station. Overall, this coaster's theming by Six Flags standards is decent. By Disney or Universal standards, it's not that great, but it's nice to see something at a Six Flags park that has a semblance of theming. Unfortunately though, it's much less than what it was when it opened. I was a toddler when this coaster stopped operating as Terminator Salvation: The Ride, so obviously I never had a chance to experience it as such, but I do feel like it might be a shell of its former self. Let me know in the comment section below, was Terminator Salvation or Apocalypse a better coaster? While the area around it has changed, and it's now known as the Underground, this coaster is still located in the back right corner of the park. It's one of the furthest rides from the front entrance, and as such, I would recommend going to this area of the park first. You should be able to get on Apocalypse and West Coast Racers with absolutely no line at all. In fact, when we did this, we got to stay on the train for Apocalypse for back-to-back rides. I'll go more in depth into the touring plan in my full review for the park, which I'll link above, but it's wise to hit this coaster early in the morning because of its location. Apocalypse is not one of the most popular rides in the park, but it can definitely build up a line. It depends on if the coaster is running two trains. In my visit to the park, I saw this coaster mostly running with one train. And it seems to run one train a bit more often than some of the other major coasters at the park, so on a busy day, don't be surprised if your wait is 30 to 60 minutes. At least this queue does have something to look at, unlike some of the other coasters at the park. Like most other coasters at Magic Mountain, this coaster's operations are decent, nothing too awesome and also nothing too terrible. They dispatch trains at a good enough clip. On those busier days, the bigger problem is the fact that they don't always run two trains. That's really where the line builds up. If lines are a problem, you can purchase Flash Pass, skip the line tickets. These can be pretty expensive though, so watch out. Once you go through the queue and enter the station, you'll see the classic GCI Millennium Flyer trains. I find these to be some of the more comfortable trains on any roller coaster. They're padded pretty well and absorb a lot of the blows of these wooden coasters. This coaster has 11 cars per train, and that totals up to 22 riders per train. Millennium Flyers have a T-bar lap bar restraint, and this can come down further during the layout, so if you want to keep it up for the entire experience, maybe hold on to the lap bar. That way it doesn't click down on the first drop or on those higher positive G moments. Interestingly, this coaster does not employ a cubby or locker system. You simply put your things on the floor on the other side of the station. I mean, hey, it works. Candidly, I prefer this over lockers. Luckily, Magic Mountain's only coaster that requires them is X2, and that makes total sense. Once you're all ready to go, you pull out of the station and take a left-hand turn. This isn't particularly eventful, but it does its job, which is to take you to the lift hill. Once you get on the lift hill, you rise up 95 feet. To your right, you get a sneak peek at some backstage areas that, to be frank, don't look that great, and in front of you, you get a nice view of some hills. When you reach the top, you don't immediately drop down. You have a little twist that leads into the 87-foot drop. I imagine this is where you reach your top speed of 50 miles an hour. The drop is fun no matter where you sit, but in the front, I think you get a better pop of airtime here. That's one of the main reasons, along with the unobstructed view, why, from my rides, I actually enjoyed the front a little bit more. In the front, you get a nice little pop of floater airtime on your way down, and it's kind of a unique drop because of the twist that follows, and it's not perfectly straight by any means. The back might get a little bit of lift, but just because of the way you take this drop, it rides a little bit better in the front for this particular moment. Either way, it's a pretty fun start to the coaster. From here, you twist to the right through the structure and into a small airtime hill, getting a little bit of airtime. From my experience, most of Apocalypse's airtime is of the floater or at the very most flojector variety, and this is another example of it. You then rise up into your first overbank turn. There are a few of these throughout the layout. On the back half of it, you traverse a little double down. In general, this moment feels relatively forgettable. It mostly feels like a transition to get you back to the other side of the ride. At least that little dip has the potential to come out of your seat. You then twist to the left over kind of a sideways hill and into your first tunnel. This is really the first moment on the coaster where you feel Apocalypse lose significant speed. Especially in the morning, you definitely feel a decrease in speed throughout this tunnel. I think the train just rises up a bit too high, and in a perfect world you'd want to put this tunnel and this turn a little bit lower. From here you dip down and go through a little S-bend before flying through the station. Because of the nature of the thing, it is straight track, but it's cool to ride through the station and to briefly look down to the guests below. In my opinion, station flyby should be more common. It builds excitement when you're in the queue, and it's a fun moment when you're actually on the coaster. And because they're not that common, Magic Mountain can claim a unique experience. From here, you twist to the left into a tunnel. This one is a lot shorter than the first, both from a height and length standpoint. You then twist to the right and into a low to the ground right-hand turn. This has decent speed, but you can start to feel the coaster slowing down. From here, you twist up into one last airtime hill and one last left-hand turn into the brakes. Apocalypse's ending isn't awful, it's just not that great, and that last turn definitely loses a lot of speed. You really notice it on cooler days or rides early in the morning. In either of these conditions, you really notice it, and it is a little bit of an anticlimactic ending. Not enough to ruin the ride experience, just enough to make you say, oh, that could have been better. In terms of smoothness, Apocalypse is pretty good in this department. It's not terribly rough, and it's not glossy smooth either. It has a classic wooden coaster rumble. And as I mentioned before, those Millennium Flyer trains really do absorb a lot of the blows, making the roughness not nearly as much of a problem as it could be with some other coaster trains. Before we compare it to the other coasters in its state and park, let's give it a final score. I'm going to give Apocalypse an 8 out of 10. This is just a solid coaster. There's really no moment that is a wow type moment, but there's also never a moment that's truly awful. It's overall solid and fun throughout the whole layout. Apocalypse is a very good representative of the wooden coaster genre for Six Flags Magic Mountain. It's kind of surprising that this is the only wood coaster left at the park, with Twisted Colossus replacing the old Colossus wood coaster. I have this coaster inside the top 10, but outside the top 5 within its own park. There are just so many good coasters here that the competition is really stiff. In terms of the other wooden coasters in California, I slotted in at number 3. Ghost Rider down at Knott's Berry Farm is a superior coaster because of its length and pacing. I also prefer Gold Striker at California's Great America. That one has pretty comparable length, and also has tunnels, and is also built by GCI, but there's a little bit more airtime and the pacing is a bit better. I also prefer Over Giant Dipper. This coaster, and for the matter the one at Belmont as well, has stood the test of time and is still running great, but Apocalypse is just a better built ride because of its newness. Even though it opened 16 years ago, that's a whole lot newer than Giant Dipper, which opened in 1924. And finally, this coaster is also better than Grizzly at Great America. Despite the fact that Grizzly is indeed faster than Apocalypse, it's much more of a family coaster because it doesn't have very many extreme elements. So, Apocalypse is overall a solid coaster, and when you're at Magic Mountain, definitely give it a whirl. So there you have it, my thoughts on Apocalypse at Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia, California. If you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate it if you consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel as well. And if you want to see a review for Magic Mountain's best coaster, go ahead and click the screen right now.